Welcome to Thank You for Your Reply, where we dive deep into the strategies and insights of real estate's most innovative professionals. I'm your host, Rich Pedersen, founder of the Reply AI. At the Reply AI, I take a consultative approach to helping businesses integrate automations and AI tools so they can get back to working on their business, not in it. In each episode of the podcast, we explore the real practices driving success in today's market. No fluff, no pitches, just real conversations with real experts sharing real results. Before we dive in, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Your engagement helps keep the show running. Without further ado, here we go. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining for another episode of Thank You for Your Reply podcast. Today, we're talking to Frank Ferrantello, the president of Ferrantello Group Land Surveying. Thanks for taking the time today out of your schedule and to come on and talk to us about Ferrantello Group.
Thank you, Rich.
So if you could just start off first to just kind of talk about what the nutshell of this company starting, and like, I know your father started it and you kind of have brought it into to what it is now.
Sure. So nearly 60 years ago, my father started a land surveying engineering company with a little bit of architect. When he kind of, just before he passed, he kind of dwindled a little bit. You know, he never added to it, never had technology. So I kind of took it from scratch. I had to rebuild a company from remnants of a company, solve all the problems, rebuild it from scratch. And now we're one of the leading expert witness land surveying civil engineering firms, Montauk to Manhattan. So between New York City and the Hamptons, this is the most contested, most crucial, competitive territory. You know, we're dealing with billionaires, big time building developers that have billions of dollars, have skyscrapers, have holdings, have Hampton estates worth $50 million, people that have on average $1 million homes. So a land survey, a piece of your real estate, is your biggest investment you'll ever make. 0.1% of people will be able to buy a $1 million car, but everyone's going to be able to, try to buy a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $900,000, $1 million home. So that's your biggest investment you're ever going to make.
Mm-hmm.
It's crucial to have the right reputable professional do it properly.
Mm-hmm. Can you also talk a little bit about the different avenues that you do land surveying? And some of them, for me, were things I hadn't even considered. Like, oh yeah, duh, that is obviously under that. But like the expert witness piece side of it, all those different.
Sure, yeah. So as a land surveyor and civil engineer, we deal with a lot of issues with drainage, flash flooding, poor design by other professionals, slips and falls, trip and falls, vehicular accidents, tree impalements coming down, improper signage, inadequate, non-compliant sites, roadways, intersections, bolts, valves, utilities, people, especially New York City. I think it's an average of 1,000 injuries a day in New York City's 5 boroughs. So I think it's like close to 10 or 12 million in that metro area. And just think about the order of magnitude with those numbers. That's potentially 1,000 lawsuits a day in New York City's 5 boroughs. And it could be a curb, a sidewalk, a ramp, a bus stop, a tree well, anything. So we deal with these, and we know the law. We know the codes and regulations. We have the knowledge and expertise for over 60 years. We have a large staff that has a good, decent amount of experience with these cases and the codes and regulations. With my creativity and problem solving, we try to present the facts, and we work for both plaintiffs and defendants, attorneys and counsel. We do work for insurance companies as well, and we do regular land surveying, but traditionally, land surveying is just a map, right? We are also staking out properties, bluffs, surveying bluffs and wetlands. We have a drone boat. We have a drone 3D scanner that shoots topography and imagery, and it shoots thousands of points per second with lasers. So it's, we're 3D scanning sites. We're going really head on to the future with digital twins. If there's a digital twin of a bridge and it needs to be laid out several times, we can stake it out, lay it out. If it's a tunnel in New York City, we can take that digital 3D model, that twin, and copy and duplicate it in various sites and implement it into the 3D as-built of that specific locale, that location.
With the business, which has been, what you said, 60 years has been around. So, and
Correct.
Obviously the way we do business has changed a lot in those 60 years.
Absolutely.
But you also have a strong clientele base. But what's your top source for getting quality client, like handling the client inquiries, and how has that evolved since you took over the business?
Well, so You have to advertise and market yourself no matter what. There's a lot of unique projects, big projects that people just may not be happy with your existing surveyor or contractor. And we try to accommodate people, and if people are in need of an emergency expert, we're it. When it comes to referrals, we get recommended at least 3 times, so at least by 3 parties, 40% of the time. So we get recommended by the village or municipality or the town. We come recommended by the architect and or the builder or even a neighbor. So we always come recommended by like 80% of the time, a neighbor or a builder expediter. We work with everybody under the sun over a 60-year period. Every architect almost, every builder developer. I mean, it's sad to say, but since the pandemic, my Rolodex has gone down a lot because people unfortunately have gotten older, passed away, or closed up shop. The past 5 years has been a strain on everybody. During COVID lockdowns, we were able to not only survive, but thrive. We were, deemed essential because we do telecommunication work, legal work. We work for villages as municipal liaisons or municipal consultants. So we always have projects, unique projects from all different walks of life, whether it's 50-story buildings, 50 by 100, or a 50-unit condominium building. So we're getting sources from every gamut of vendors, contractors, and clients.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't really think about it. Particularly, depending on what your job is, can affect how many avenues of referral coming in.
Well, it does make the systemization of the business a little difficult because there's so many types of projects and every site is different, and every site and topography and existing conditions creates a unique set of problems that you have to provide solutions for. So people don't realize when we survey a piece of property, more or less any type of survey for any reason, we're surveying every square foot of the property, every tree size, every tree species, every utility. A lot of times we're not just surveying the site, we're surveying the adjoining sites as well to show in relationship the topography, if waters or the land is coming into the property and causing a drainage or ponding issue. A lot of regulatory regulations for municipalities mandate that we get the adjoining buildings to show relationship and vicinity to nearby structures. And a lot of surveying is also overlap into the roadway and the right of ways. We may have to go 50 feet on both sides of the property and the full width of the road. Sometimes, New York State applications for New York State Department of Transportation, we got to go 250 feet around our property. So it's not just that property, and that's just the actual scope of the work. The actual boundary determination, the legal determination of us as an expert forming an opinion where the property boundary is and lies is solely up to our opinion. It's got to be based upon physical legal survey evidence. And it's about our diligence. So if you don't have a diligent surveyor who's willing to charge you the appropriate fee to do the job right, then you're going to be short-changed in some way, shape, or form. And we have a lot of records. We have millions and millions of records dating back over 150 years, and some is still applicable. It's almost like an archaeology project. Some of these points that we have to recover are multiple feet down in the ground. We have to excavate, locate it, and dig down 2 or 3 feet, clean it up, and we find a stone or a concrete post with a cross in it or a pin. Even sometimes they're brass pins or iron pins. And so it's a little bit of a lot of history, but a little bit of archaeology also recovering these points. And they find them usually at the 4 corners of the block or the 4 corners of the subdivision. So that could be 500 feet or it could be 5,000 feet from the project.
Wow.
So we're really surveying the whole subdivision in order to subdivide or establish a survey for a piece of property in itself.
Okay. Yeah. That's even that brief explanation of kind of giving me a lot of the things have clicked into place when I've seen people working around doing surveying, and I know that they're doing surveying, but I don't really know what they're doing. But what you just described, I'm like, oh, okay.
The common misconception is that we could just go to the county and for free or a relatively cheap fee, we could just buy coordinates of every lot or every block. Especially in New York State, that doesn't happen. We're a colonial state. Our history of these subdivisions, farmland, tracts of land, go back to land patents and land grants. And they go back to, especially like in Long Island, this is in Nassau and Suffolk County. That's Nassau County was the Dutch and Suffolk County was the British. And this is the same boundary line between Nassau and Suffolk counties is the same boundary line between the Dutch and the British. Yeah. So a lot of these properties have issues, and There's surveyors discrepancies in these maps. We have to get every deed, every survey, every map, and resolve these issues just to do one survey.
Yeah. Okay. So you, on a different subject, you talked about when we spoke before. You said you do use do advertising on Google and all that. Can you describe a successful marketing strategy that you've implemented that doesn't rely on paid advertising?
So I mean, would email campaigns count? Yeah.
Yeah, cold email
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah. So we do email a lot of, we have a good database of existing clients, and it's about reminding them who we are, what our value is, and what we can do. A lot of property owners, maybe they just need a regulatory building department survey for a building permit, but do they know where their property is? They look at the survey, they may not know how to read it. It may be a certain type of survey where it's just topography or just for building permits, but they need a boundary survey, and they need it staked and marked physically on the ground so they can see visually where's that tangible line. Because on a survey, it's just a line, it's invisible in the field. It could be going through a row of hedges or trees, and sometimes the utility company may cut them down, the neighbor may cut down the trees, and these are trees worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you have to remove them, they're mature. Lawsuit and liability could be multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it happens quite often where we retain as an expert. We have to go through record aerial photography, older surveys, and establish where these trees are. We've had property developers cut down their whole entire site, all the trees, and it's against the village municipal regulations. And we have to survey the tree stumps and get the tree sizes from the stumps. And it could be upwards of $1 million in fines. I'll give you one crazy example. New York City Parks and Recreational Department fines any person for $10,000 per inch of a tree. So if a tree has a diameter of 24 inches, which is common in parts of like Queens and New York City, that's $240,000 fine.
What? For what?
Yes.
Cutting it down?
For cutting it down.
Holy crap. Oh my God. Yeah. And okay. Yeah. That's crazy. And then is that's just because of how
well, trees are very
historic that
rare.
land is? Yeah.
Well, the trees are very rare in New York City. So, so established specimen tree or established tree, mature tree that's 24 inches in diameter, takes a good 20 years to grow.
Yeah.
And when they replant these street trees in New York City, they're only 4 inches in diameter, and they have to mount them. They have to support them with supports. So they want to make sure they grow right, they grow straight up and plumb, and it's a loss of value, basically, because even when you have a new site, and let's say you buy a property, you want to knock down the house, knock down trees, and re-contour and relay out the entire site or new home, right? A lot of villages will tell you if you cut down 1 inch of trees, you got to plant back 2 inches of trees. So if you have 10 trees that are 20 inches each, that's 200 inches trees. You have to do a 2-to-1 ratio. That's 400 inches of trees. If you're planting 4-inch trees back, that's 100 trees. Now, trees of that caliber usually cost about $1,000 each. So there's $100,000 just in raw landscaping supplies. Not to mention the labor, the landscape plan. So that could be easy $150,000 to $200,000 project just to replant and be in compliance with keeping the caliper mature trees on a site. Because remember, not to get too heavy, but I'm also a spiritual warfare Christian minister. God designed our lungs to need oxygen. And just like the branches of a tree, alveoli are lung branches. They put out CO2, but they need oxygen in. The trees do the opposite. They supplement and complement that. So the tree branches need to, and they give out oxygens. In order for us to be healthy, we need trees. We need mature trees.
Yeah, I like to say, what is the Amazon is the lungs of the earth, or that down there in the in South America with because it's such a huge swath of it's getting cut down, sadly, but I've always heard that being called the lungs of the earth. But
yes,
yeah, that's good. That's a good point.
It's important to areas conservation areas. You need to conserve land and nature.
Yeah, I fully agree. Especially in the cities like that where it's just all the concrete jungle.
There's a lot of posts on social media that if you just plant like fruit and vegetable trees and people could just, like homeless people could just go there and just get an apple. It was designed for us. Why not just utilize it? You know?
Yeah, well, as some social media posts I saw made me think of this, where they, in the 40s, I think it was, they decided we need to plant male trees in cities because they don't make a mess. But that is one of the big reasons why allergies are the way, like seasonal allergies are the way they are, because it's all these male trees putting out their pollen and just skyrocketed like asthma and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you from seeing the environment, always being outdoors, it's much more yellow, much more dense, just more of a multitude of pollen than it ever was.
Hmm.
I don't think the trees are that healthy. I think that's why they're extra pollination and they're just over pollinating. And
Yeah.
there's an issue with the bees too. If you follow social media,
Yeah.
there's an issue with the bees, and bees are very important and essential. People don't realize how important bees are, especially with their honey and what they do, how the frequency that they put out. So if you look at the science, bees actually hover on frequency. So it's not their body is so big compared to their wings.
Yeah.
It doesn't cover the lift that's needed. So because their body's almost a hollow cavity, they resonate and vibrate at a certain frequency and they kind of basically levitate almost. They like the hum. With their honey has a certain frequency to it and it has hexagonal shape because it's basically divine geometry and divine symmetry. And it's very unique, but it's essential to the entire system of fauna, flora, and the whole chain, the whole ecosystem.
Yeah. I saw a picture where I used to be a hobby beekeeper like 10 years ago. And so I was just like obsessed with them. Don't even get me started. But you're seeing a picture like what our food would look like, what it looks like now with bees, what it would look like without. It's just like you just took
There'd be no
away
food.
like 20% of all the vegetables and fruits. Got a fly flying around here. Okay. Resisting the urge to go down that tangent.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
There's so many tangents.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up the spiritual warfare thing, because I was like, remember we talked about that when in our previous call, and I was like, I don't know how I fit that in here, but
Well,
at
as a
least
land
I'm glad
surveyor,
it was mentioned.
as a land surveyor, there's always a pattern of repetition of numbers. I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm surveying a piece of property in a high-end North Shore community, and this piece of property particularly, for some reason, they always call us on 9/11. It could be 9/11, 2001, they called us, 9/11, 2007. And what are the odds the third time over 20 years they call us 9/11 in 2021? Just and even the dimensions of the property, it repeats. The numbers repeat. They have a constant algorithm to them. It's almost like the golden ratio. If you look at nature, look at symmetry, look at seashells, horseshoe crabs, different bionic design,
The Nautilus
biology.
shell.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing, but it repeats in surveying too, especially. And if you like, for example, like in the Bible, they talk about the new heaven, new Jerusalem in the book of Revelation. It talks about the surveying units of the new heaven, and it's 144 cubits by 144 cubits. So if you multiply 144 squared, 144 times 144 cubits, we are very close to that quantum, because remember, the quantum computing is measured in qubits. So we're very close to that quantum level of computing that would equate that dimension or that linear dimension, which is also kind of like almost a multiple dimension, like the third, fourth dimension, the fifth dimension. But it's very intriguing. That's a whole nother route we could go, but that's very deep. So
Yeah.
as a land surveyor, I help people monument and delineate their boundary lines. And what people they often overlook is blessing their land as well as their home. And nowadays, where people have been jaded, they have all these misbeliefs and misnomers about the holidays versus the holy days and the feasts.
Yeah.
They made everything a holiday instead of a holy day. And instead of being people holy, they get greedy and they, for example, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, holidays, it's all about gifts and buying and spoiling, and then everyone ends up fighting or arguing about something.
Yeah. I'm
But
jealous
if you
of what
try
the
to
other
be
one got.
holy, yeah, if you try to be holy, it's not about being jealous, not about being greedy or envious or gluttonous. It's about sacrificing. And again, getting back to surveying, we help people and we teach them how to bless the land cleanse the land, and as well as the home. The home is a box, it's a building, it's a dwelling. It has four corners, just like your property. Most properties have four corners. It's important to monument, mark them, and bless them and cleanse them, because you don't know who was in the house before you. There's many religions, there's many sects and denominations, and there's radical people that still do animal sacrifice. Right. So about 12 years ago, I was looking at a piece of property to buy for my family, and it was a cheap deal, and it was like too good to be true. And I'm like, and a friend of mine who was also a builder developer said, Frank, don't buy that piece of property. The town condemned it, knocked down the house. It's nice vacant land, but the guy was literally the prior occupants were literally sacrificing animals to their deities. So I had a spiritual calling just before the pandemic, and I would say 2017 was really the main calling, and it just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And even like 6 months before the pandemic, I just had an overwhelming feeling of what was to come. And I even, like, in November of 2019, brought my team of surveyors, the field people, the actual field surveyors that do the work out in the field, because it's vigorous. You got to be smart. You got to, the elements, bees, ticks, poison ivy, thorns, briars, neighbors, dogs, you'd be surprised. So I brought them on a little warrior weekend upstate New York, and it was a little chilly, but we climbed a mountain. I kind of showed them, demonstrated to them that, if you even can't see the mountain, that's okay. Just take small steps. If you improve 1% a day, over a year, that's 365%. That's a new man. That's a new person.
Yeah.
That's a completely new you. And it's not about trying to be the person you're supposed to be, or who you are. You want to be the better version of yourself. And there's a white space or a gap between who you are and who you want to become and should become. What does the man or the person look, or the leader become and look like, that is going to change his family, his community, and better society? The enemy and the church kind of attacks men at an early age and an early stage with everything that's going on with the church. And that's all by design. And there's a whole podcast on that I've done before. But it's about attacking men, because men are the pillar of society. Men are supposed to protect women, supposed to nurture women to be the divine feminine. And there's a big imbalance in the divine feminine versus the divine masculine. That's why everything's all kind of in an uproar and upset. But men are supposed to protect. They're supposed to go out and help their neighbors, help them with their problems. They're supposed to be leaders in making everything kind of come together and work everything out, and, it's important to bless your home and cleanse your home, but the land as well, because the land is very important.
Well, that's an interesting point.
If you build on quicksand, you're not going to have a strong foundation.
Yeah, true. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, you can kind of, based on what you've just explained, you can either put a capital B on belief, or lowercase. What's a commonly held belief about land surveying or civil engineering that you found to be a misconception? Go.
Okay, so this is an everyday thing that they think we just have a map from an aerial satellite and we could just do it in 15 minutes. And the problem is, it takes 7 to 11 professional staff members, professional rates, to perform a property survey, even on a basic level. We have to research the record deed, the record map, the tax map, several documents. They cost money, the time, all the checks involved, going out and mobilizing a field crew to go take survey measurements with hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment, with the elements and stuff like that. A lot of properties have ticks. It could be a half acre, 1 acre, it could be steeply sloped, going back and forth. You're not only surveying the one piece. What affects your piece of property affects the neighbors. So the entire block and or the entire subdivision all has to do with your one little survey. Then we leave the site, we're not done. We still have to do the boundary analysis, and only an expert licensed land surveyor is going to ultimately make that decision and determination. And then we have a system of checks.
So do you find yourself having to, like, counteract that mentality of, like, oh, I could just do a drone flight and call it a day? Like,
can't you just take out a compass
do you
and
want
a
to do
GPS?
it right?
Yeah. So I want you to come to the property in an hour, and with your GPS and your compass, and just survey the property like in 15 minutes. Or even, the problem is, there's a big chunk of change in the industry that call it fly-by-night land surveyors nowadays that will just copy a survey. And they think, oh, you know what? The building's not going to move. But I get retained a lot, and I get a lot of money as a retainer to be an expert because they're off 6 inches, 9 inches. And listen, people fight over the eighth of an inch. People would fight over how much of a PVC fence cap is encroaching, the concrete footing of the PVC fence post. They will try to use land surveying services as an instrument of spite. You know, can you stick every 5 feet so my neighbor will stay away? They fight over garbage cans. They fight over how much of a brick. In Queens and New York City, a lot of homes are row houses and they have party walls. And this half of the wall and this half of the wall they're dependent on one another.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let's say the full wall is 12 inches. Well, I have 6 inches and you have 6 inches. If you take down your 6 inches of wall on your property, my wall would collapse and so would yours. And so they're asking, you know, and this has gotten over the past 20 years exponentially worse.
Yeah, I bet. It makes me think of the house I own in Oregon. I'm putting it up on the market to sell it. Unbeknownst to me when I bought it, and I found out this later, but the previous owner had finished a fence line in the backyard to line up with the other fences that were there. But to do so, he had to go into the abutting yard by, I don't know, 3 feet, just so that it would line up with the fence that was already there in that neighbor's yard. And he got just verbal permission to do it, and it's been fine. But I'm just wondering, when I'm now selling it, if that's going to come up. Is that neighbor going to? Luckily, he doesn't live there, so. But if he hears about that I'm selling the house, is he going to choose this moment to try to claw back his 3 feet of this 3 by, I don't know, 20 feet of land right there?
Yeah.
Fingers crossed that he's not.
You know, it's commonplace though. You'll be at a bar, you'll be at an event, and someone will talk about a boundary issue, a fence issue, you know, a property issue.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of surveyors don't show easements. They just copy a survey. You know, if it's a 50 by 100 and square, all right, you know, maybe 30, 40% of the time there's been no issues. But more than half the time there are issues. You're compounding a previous surveyor's error. You're assuming that that surveyor is correct, and you're not doing it in compliance with the minimum technical standards that everyone else has to adhere to. And it only takes one mistake by a surveyor to cause a major issue. And what's their reassurance? So part of my marketing scheme is, and it's a scheme, but it's a technique, because I'm willing to put my reputation on the line. I have my name tied to my company, and I'm almost getting tired of defending my work against people that will just copy surveys and do substandard work. But almost every time, you know, they acquiesce and they agree.
Yeah.
Ferrantello's right. But that causes a problem because they figure they can just copy our work because it's so good.
Yeah.
So we basically guarantee and certify that our surveys are accurate within a certain tolerance, and that we will stand by them in a court of law, and we will give you access to our records. We're transparent. And I ask, you know, if you're going to save $50 and someone's $50 cheaper, and we come recommended by 3 parties, I'm not really in that type of business anymore. I'm an expert. You want value? We're here. We're a full service shop. But more than that, we're willing to stand by our work in a court of law and provide a certification of that. We're licensed professionals. We should be able to do that. Other people, you ask them, oh, it's a cheap survey. I can't give you the records. I can't guarantee you I'm going to be able to stake it out or stand by it. We will ask them, okay, you charged half the price of the other qualified expert. Can you stand by this in a court of law? Will you testify? Will you certify that this is accurate and made by physical legal evidence? If you ask them that, you call their bluff, they're going to say no, they can't. They can't do it. And the problem is people don't know any better.
Yeah.
The general public, they don't know any better because of lack of education when it comes to land surveying and what a land surveyor really is.
Yeah, that makes sense. But getting more into sort of day to day, time is sort of a critical commodity for everybody. How do you structure your workday to optimize your productivity and manage all of your high volume of incoming queries and everything?
You got to live and die by the calendar. Doesn't always go to schedule according to plan, but you got to block out your time and leave some safety factors in there. You know, as a business owner and a professional, you need a personal and executive assistant. You know, you need that. Even if you get a virtual one, I have a virtual one in the Philippines, but you need that. You need someone to give you support. You need the right support staff. And that's basically it. Just having the right support staff.
Yeah. So you're not in the weeds doing mundane things that take you away from
Well,
it.
it sometimes, as a licensed professional, I might have to get in there and solve a problem that's
Yeah.
specialty. I'm the expert. So sometimes I have to draft some things because it's a very unique situation, or
Hmm.
do some computation. So as an expert, I am doing the work as
Hmm.
well. So I'm doing both.
Well, and yeah, if you're signing off on it, you also got to make sure that it's,
Correct. Yeah. So I'm
up to
working in
standard.
and on the business, which is a
Yeah.
hard balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. So what are, I'm sure you have a couple of, a few competitors in your area. What's your way of kind of differentiating and standing out from them?
Well, so I'll give you an example. My competitors, sometimes they were 10 weeks behind. Well, we can get out there within a week, mobilize, do what we need to do. We're going to charge you a little bit extra. But what people don't realize, other professionals, is these clients are losing 10,000 plus a month for these delays. So if we're able to add value and save them at least $10,000, if we charge them a small rush fee, why you make the client happy by saying yes. If you're able to do it, you charge them accordingly for the added value, and everyone's happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we're not in the
And
type of business where we're gonna have clients. Could you do it for $50 cheaper? Because I found someone to do it cheaper for $50. I'm like, you're gonna lose 50 inches, but that guy's gonna cut you off $50 worth of work.
yeah.
He's gonna make a mistake by 50 inches, and that
Yeah.
happens.
And then, yeah, maybe not stand up in the court of law for with it. And
Correct. And
yeah.
then
And
it's
then, so,
half of my quotes are new projects, surveys were done within the past 3 years that they cannot go back on their own work. They cannot do extra or additional services. For example, if someone bought a piece of property with a title survey to get title insurance, they got a cheap and fast survey from the title company. Title company was able to make money on top of that by hiring a cheap, fast surveyor. They will not stand by that work, and they will not stake out the property lines because they did not do a full survey of the block. They just did one survey on one piece of property and they copied it. So let's say it was a large piece of property and they projected the house into the backyard. They could be rotated by a few feet.
oh, wow. Yeah. That's crazy. That's so many things you don't even think about. The regular Joe Blow walking down the street wouldn't even consider. So, can you share any significant challenge you faced when you were modernizing your father's business, and any lessons you learned from that?
Yes, well, the profession has not increased their prices over the past 30 years by any more than 50%. It should be 5,000% with the business expenses, the health insurance. Land surveying was once, up until the 1940s and 50s, the highest paid profession, more than attorneys. Now it is closest to the lowest paid profession because of the lump sum nature and the fact that people can copy surveys and just, okay, let me just underbid it. Let me just get all the work. And so it's a dying profession also because there's so little land surveyors. Believe it or not, land surveyors have a monopoly. They just don't know it, and they just don't want to act like it. You know, the surveying profession is dying as a result of people not investing in their people, investing in the profession, or the general education of the public in regards to our profession.
Hmm. And so, there's not new people coming into it who are,
There's a few. There's a
yeah,
handful.
yeah. And so, what happen? What happens when there are no more land surveyors? If that can happen.
I mean, it's going to get more specialized. It's going to get more specialized. I have new guys that come in because I was the past president of the association. They come to me for, hey, Mr. Ferrantello, I'm working on your project and I'm taking it over because I underbid it and I need help now figuring out, or I need help with a certain, let's say the a neighboring property. They need help because they can't do the job. Right. So
Hmm.
that is what it is at the end of the day. But land surveyors need to work together. Uh, there's a pricing issue. It's not even like a living wage on some of these jobs because certain firms will just undercut it,
Really?
and they're just copying a piece of paper,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
Oh, that's crazy. What's the solution to that? Just
Well, I did help create the minimum technical standards for New York State. They have not been 100% made into legislation yet. There are minimum suggested guidelines, which is technically it is the standard basically, but at the end of the day, it does say it's suggested.
hmm.
Um, there's there's two surveyors that exist, a reputable expert and then the latter of the two, someone willing just to copy the survey.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. I guess if no one came out to the property, it's probably bogus. So how do you nurture relationships with past clients to kind of secure your repeat business and all that?
Email marketing, I would say, just email blasts, newsletters, blogs.
Yeah.
I do a lot of that. There's a lot of use cases and case studies, of new laws and regulations, and just general pre-property, pre-purchase, so pre-purchase property due diligence feasibility. People need to be protected. And if they're, willing to spend a few $100s, a few $1,000s on being protected, we'll do a feasibility study and give them a rough schedule, a rough estimate of what it's going to cost, attorney's fees, building department fees, permit fees, and the schedule, all the different hurdles, because there's a lot of red tape, a lot of compliance and regulatory hurdles you have to jump through, especially in New York State and these high-end areas, municipalities.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine and it must be, like you said earlier, how complicated the actual surveys are with it being Commonwealth. Do you have any examples of you have any good stories of a past client that led to some kind of really interesting witness work, or like what's your
So I did it work.
did you see
I did, yeah.
case you had to work on?
Well, it was a wrongful death suit with a restaurant with valet operations and valet parking in the middle of a highway. It's a busy county road, and they went not only into the shoulder, they went past the shoulder, and they went into the first lane of traffic. Okay, and they had a little posted, like stanchion and stand, and a doctor had got killed, and obviously a doctor's worth a lot of money, and the wife sued for like $20 million. As an expert witness, I kind of surveyed the entire scene and demonstrated that, this person that was drunk basically at any point in time could see the doctor around the valley operations, and the valley operations and the restaurant owner subsequently was not liable for it at all. And it's a matter of the drunk driver driving uphill at 60 plus miles an hour, driving through a grid line in the street and all these traffic lights, and he was just going crazy. He was going to hit anybody. He could have mowed down 50 people, but he didn't care. So I saved the client $8 million. So now, I have a lot of work and referral because I was very well presented at the mediation and just showing the facts and figures. It's just the way you look at it.
I want to circle back to, I meant to ask it earlier when you were talking about it, but you were talking about blessing the land. Is that something? Do you want to talk about that? What is that something that you do for them?
I show people how to do it because you know what?
Okay.
At the end of the day, we all fall short of a divine creator, a divine designer, right? Everyone's a sinner in a way. Maybe I swear. Oh, Jesus Christ, God damn, God forbid. Let's say I just said that because I learned it in the movies, and it's a habit. That's swearing. That's technically a sin, right? In some eyes.
Mhm.
So we're all fall short of a perfect divine designer. But I show people how to do it. I do it with them, and if they're willing to let me enter their house and their family, and I show them why and how, the background, whether it's negative energy, entities, whatever you want to call it. It's about just being renewed with the Holy Spirit, and whether you want to call it source, God, creator, divine designer, celestial creator. You just look at the heavens, just look at earth, how beautiful it is. Look at nature, the divine design of things. Some people lose faith. Some people just go to church to go to church. But you got to realize people have objects in their homes, and they could be tied to things. They could be energetically charged. They could have certain beliefs and intentions tied to them. So, I have a calling, and I'm like attracted to certain things like that. That's got to go. That's just like it's a demonic talking head from Africa, and it represents evil god Loki or something, or the god of mischief. Like literally, like it's like once you have the veil lifted, you see it.
Yeah.
And you're drawn to it. And that's it. There's no question about it. It's clear cut. The veil's lifted, and people have the eyes to see. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that something that you do, that you go into if it kind of comes to you when you're on a job, or?
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. Okay. It's not like in the package
No.
in the job, in the write up.
No, but I mean, people tell me their problems about the fights with the neighbors, the legal issues, the drainage issues. And then just if something resonates with me on the phone and I feel it's appropriate,
Mm-hmm.
I'll have a conversation with someone if they're open to it. It's a difficult path to walk. Some people might take offense by that.
Mm-hmm. So if you want to, can you give us like a parting, like what's a skill that you think is overlooked by professionals in the industry that is essential to success and longevity of land surveying?
So as a land surveyor, in order to get my license and obtain my license, I had to study the law, different types of law, environmental, general obligations, general municipal law, the zoning codes. And so we are a quasi-legal professional. And, especially that's my forte. I didn't go to law school, but I'm a land surveyor, civil engineer. And I said, before I start going to law school, let me just study more what I already love and I'm already good at and just become better at it, become an expert witness. And just by people constantly reaching out to me and my father, you need expert services. My father actually turned these services away because he was a little fearful of the unknown. He was set in his ways. So I thrive with that, telecommunication work. I love finding new stuff, new things I can learn from and take on and solve problems. It's a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Frank, for taking the time
Thank
today,
you.
and I'll let you get off to your next appointment. Yeah, we'll have to try to get you back on for
It'd be my pleasure, really.
talk about non land surveying things.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rich. It's been a pleasure.
That wraps up another episode of Thank You for Your Reply. To our listeners, you can find show notes and links below this video, or if you're on audio, it'll be in the show description. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe so you'll be able to catch the new episodes when they drop. If you'd like to talk to me about how you can optimize your business with tried and true AI technology, please head on over to thereply.ai to get in touch. Until next time, keep innovating, keep growing, and remember, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.